Before we begin, I need you to understand something. Broken does not mean abandoned. Silence does not mean God is absent. And your lowest moment was never outside the reach of heaven. There was a season when my prayers sounded more like tears than words, when faith felt fragiler, when I was holding on with trembling hands. But what I didn't realize was this: while I was breaking, God was listening. Some of you watching right now feel like you've been fighting battles nobody sees. You've smiled in public but wrestled in private. And you've asked God, "Do you hear me?" I came with an answer: why, yes, He hears the cry you couldn't even finish. Because God doesn't just respond to polished prayers, He moves when hearts are raw, when voices shake, when surrender replaces strength. Your breaking point is not the end of your story, it's the birthplace of transformation. Tonight, this message is not just a speech, it's a declaration that every tear has a witness, every silent prayer has a record, and every broken moment can become a doorway to divine restoration. So lean in, open your spirit, and let's talk about what happens when heaven responds to a soul that refused to give up even while it was breaking. There are moments when words fail you, when language feels too small to carry the weight of what your soul is experiencing. You open your mouth to pray, and nothing comes out except breath that trembles and eyes that overflow. In those moments, you may think heaven is waiting for perfect sentences, polished faith, or structured devotion, but God is not listening for performance. God is listening for authenticity. The tears you cry in the quiet of your room speak a language older than vocabulary, deeper than articulation, and stronger than any sermon you could rehearse. Long before you learned how to form a prayer with your lips, your heart already knew how to reach toward Him, and heaven has always understood that silent reaching. Some people believe that prayer must sound strong to be effective, but some of the most powerful prayers are whispered through weakness. When your shoulders feel heavy and your thoughts feel scattered, the cry that rises from within you becomes a signal flare that heaven cannot ignore. You might think that your breaking disqualifies you from being heard, yet Scripture and experience both reveal that brokenness often amplifies your voice rather than silences it. The trembling inside you is not proof that you are far from God. It is often evidence that you are standing at the very threshold where transformation begins to unfold. There are nights when you kneel with questions you cannot even frame. When disappointment presses against your chest like a storm cloud that refuses to move. You may sit in stillness, unsure whether your silence counts as prayer, wondering if heaven recognizes the ache you carry without explanation. But God hears the rhythm of your breathing, the pauses between your thoughts, the sigh that escapes when words are too heavy to lift. Your tears become a vocabulary that requires no translation. They rise like incense, not because they are eloquent, but because they are honest. What you think is weakness becomes a form of worship that bypasses human language and reaches directly into the heart of God. Sometimes you feel pressure to present yourself as strong, as if faith must always look confident and unshaken. Yet God does not measure the sincerity of your prayer by the volume of your voice or the length of your sentences. He listens for the posture of your heart. When your spirit collapses under the weight of life, when disappointment cracks the surface of your strength, something sacred happens. The mask falls away and the real you stands exposed, raw and unfiltered. That authenticity becomes a doorway through which divine compassion flows. You are not heard because you sound impressive, you are heard because you are real. There are seasons when you cry out internally while maintaining a composed exterior, smiling at people who never see the internal storm. You walk through crowded spaces carrying invisible burdens, and your silent prayers become a constant background rhythm beneath your daily responsibilities. In those hidden moments, God hears what no one else can perceive. He listens to the prayers embedded in your exhaustion, the ones woven into the quiet moments between conversations. Even when you feel unseen by the world, heaven remains attentive, responding not only to your spoken declarations, but also to the emotional currents moving beneath them. The world often celebrates loud faith, dramatic declarations, and confident proclamations, yet many spiritual breakthroughs begin in quiet desperation. When you run out of impressive words and find yourself sitting in stillness, unsure how to continue, you may believe that your connection to God has weakened. But silence is not absence, it is sometimes the deepest form of communion. The tears you hide become a sacred dialogue, a conversation that flows without sound. God is not confused by your silence. He does not require explanation to understand your struggle. He reads the language written in your spirit long before you attempt to translate it into speech. You may remember times when you tried to pray, but ended up crying instead, feeling guilty because your devotion did not look the way you expected. Perhaps you thought you lacked discipline or spiritual maturity, unaware that your tears were already carrying your message to heaven. The vulnerability you experience in those moments becomes an offering, a release of everything you cannot control. God hears the questions behind your tears, the longing for peace, the desire for clarity, the hope that something beyond your strength will intervene. Even when your voice falters, your heart continues to speak with clarity that transcends sound. Pain has a way of stripping away pretense, leaving you with nothing but truth. In that raw space, your cries become pure expressions of dependence. You are no longer trying to impress anyone, no longer trying to appear unshaken. Instead, you stand before God exactly as you are, carrying the weight of your humanity without disguise. That honesty creates a sacred atmosphere where healing can begin. The tears that fall from your eyes are not signs of defeat. They are signals that your spirit is reaching beyond itself, searching for something eternal in the midst of temporary struggle. When you think about the times you felt most alone, you may recall moments when you could not form a single complete prayer. Your mind raced, your heart felt heavy, and your emotions spilled out in waves that words could not contain. Yet even then, heaven was not silent. God heard the unspoken requests hidden within your sorrow. He recognized the courage it took to remain present in your pain instead of running from it. The cries you released became echoes in the spiritual realm, reminders that faith is not always loud, but is always alive. Even when it feels fragile, some people believe that only structured prayer carries power. But the reality is that God honors sincerity more than structure. Your whispered, "Help me," can carry more weight than 1,000 rehearsed phrases. The tears that fall during moments of surrender become seeds planted in spiritual soil, seeds that grow into strength you cannot yet see. When you cry, you are not losing control, you are releasing burdens you were never meant to carry alone. Heaven does not dismiss those moments as weakness. Instead, they become turning points where grace meets vulnerability and begins to reshape your perspective. You may have experienced seasons when your faith felt distant, when you wondered if your prayers were reaching beyond the ceiling. Doubt can creep into your thoughts, whispering that your silence means God has turned away. But the truth is that divine attention does not depend on your emotional stability. God hears the prayers you cry, even when you are unsure how to believe. He listens through your uncertainty, responding not to your perfection, but to your willingness to remain open despite confusion. The tears you shed become evidence that your spirit still longs for connection, even when your mind struggles to understand. Every tear carries a story, a memory, a fragment of hope that refuses to disappear. When you cry in prayer, you release more than emotion. You release expectation, longing, and the desire for something greater than your current circumstances. God gathers those silent expressions and holds them with care, recognizing the depth behind each drop. You may never fully see how those moments shape your spiritual journey, but they leave an imprint on your heart that strengthens your capacity for compassion and resilience. The vulnerability you experience becomes a bridge between your humanity and divine presence. There are times when you try to hold back your tears, believing that strength requires composure. You wipe your eyes quickly, apologizing for feeling too much, as if emotion were a flaw instead of a sacred response to life. Yet God does not ask you to hide your humanity. He meets you in the very place where your emotions overflow, turning your cries into a form of worship that does not rely on performance. Your tears become proof that your heart is still alive, still reaching, still believing that something beyond your current reality is possible. In moments of deep sorrow, you may feel as though your voice has been taken from you, leaving you with nothing but quiet desperation. But even when you cannot speak, your spirit continues to communicate. God hears the rhythm of your heartbeat, the tremor in your breath, the silent questions that echo through your thoughts. The absence of words does not create distance between you and heaven. Instead, it invites a deeper connection, one that moves beyond language and enters the realm of pure presence, where your soul rests without needing to explain itself. When you look back on your journey, you may realize that some of the most significant shifts in your life began during moments when you cried more than you spoke. Those seasons of vulnerability were not wasted time, they were sacred spaces where healing quietly took root. God heard every tear you shed, even the ones you tried to hide from yourself. He understood the complexity behind your silence, recognizing the courage it took to remain open when closing your heart might have felt easier. Your tears became pathways through which grace moved gently, reshaping your understanding of strength and surrender. You may still find yourself in a season where words feel heavy and emotions rise without warning, where prayer looks more like weeping than speaking. In that space, remember that heaven does not require eloquence to respond. The language of tears carries a frequency that reaches beyond the limitations of speech. God hears the prayers you cry, not just the ones you speak, recognizing the depth of your longing even when you struggle to define it, listening to the quiet movement of your spirit as it reaches toward hope in the middle of uncertainty, holding every unspoken desire with compassion that continues to move through your life, yet see where the path is leading, and you sit in the stillness feeling both fragile and held while something begins to shift within you. The tears keep falling as a conversation that has not yet finished forming into words, and the silence stretches, waiting to be filled with breath that trembles in the stand of birth and all that space would be filled with breath that it can stay, still becoming, while something conversation will be still becoming. There comes a moment in every life when the ground beneath you shifts and everything you once depended on begins to feel unstable. You look at the pieces of what used to be familiar and wonder how you ended up standing in the middle of something that feels shattered. In those moments, it is easy to believe that brokenness is proof that you have been forgotten, overlooked, or set aside. The human mind often interprets pain as rejection, as if hardship were a sign that heaven has turned away. Yet brokenness carries a deeper meaning, one that is not rooted in abandonment, but in transformation. What feels like an ending is often the quiet beginning of a new alignment, a divine turning point that redirects your path in ways you could not have imagined when everything felt secure. When life breaks open your expectations, it exposes layers within you that comfort could never reach. You begin to see parts of yourself that remained hidden beneath routines and roles, parts that only emerge when certainty dissolves. Brokenness strips away illusions of control, inviting you into a space where dependence becomes sacred instead of shameful. It is in that vulnerable space that many people encounter clarity for the first time. The distractions fade, the noise softens, and you begin to hear a deeper voice guiding you toward growth that cannot happen in the safety of familiarity. What once felt like rejection slowly reveals itself as an invitation to evolve. People often assume that divine favor looks like uninterrupted success, but growth rarely unfolds without disruption. The moments that shake you are not necessarily punishments, they are sometimes realignments. When something breaks, it forces you to reevaluate what you believed about yourself and the world around you. You begin to question old narratives, old fears, and old limitations that once defined your sense of possibility. This questioning is not a sign that you are lost. It is evidence that something new is being formed within you. Brokenness becomes a doorway through which deeper wisdom enters, reshaping the way you understand strength. There is a sacred tension in seasons of breaking. You feel the ache of loss while sensing that something meaningful is unfolding beneath the surface. The mind may resist this process, searching for quick fixes or immediate restoration, but the heart recognizes that transformation takes time. Each fracture becomes an opening through which light can enter, illuminating areas of your life that were previously hidden in shadow. Instead of viewing brokenness as a final verdict, you begin to see it as a turning point where old patterns lose their grip and new perspectives begin to emerge. In moments of deep vulnerability, you may feel exposed, as though the walls you built to protect yourself have collapsed. This exposure can be uncomfortable, even frightening, because it reveals truths you may have avoided. Yet within that exposure lies an opportunity to reconnect with authenticity. Without the pressure to appear perfect, you can finally acknowledge your needs, your fears, and your desires without disguise. Brokenness removes the mask and invites you into honesty, creating space for healing that goes beyond surface solutions. It teaches you that strength does not come from pretending to be whole, but from embracing the process of becoming whole. Sometimes the greatest turning points arrive disguised as disappointments. Plans unravel, relationships shift, and dreams evolve in ways you did not expect. In the middle of that uncertainty, it is easy to believe that something has gone wrong. But brokenness often signals that you have reached the edge of an old chapter. The discomfort you feel is not always a sign of failure. It can be a signal that growth is pushing you toward a new direction. The divine often works through transitions that feel messy and incomplete, guiding you toward spaces where your purpose can expand beyond previous limitations. As you walk through a season of breaking, you may notice how your priorities begin to change. Things that once felt urgent lose their importance, while deeper values rise to the surface. You start to crave authenticity over approval, meaning over comfort, connection over performance. This shift is not accidental, it is part of the turning point unfolding within you. Brokenness rearranges your inner world, clearing away distractions so you can recognize what truly matters. It invites you to redefine success not by external validation, but by inner alignment. There are moments when you may feel tempted to rush through the process, to patch together the broken pieces as quickly as possible in order to return to normal. Yet healing does not always follow a straight path. Sometimes the most profound transformation happens when you allow yourself to sit in the in-between space, where old identities are dissolving and new ones have not yet fully formed. This space can feel uncertain, but it is also rich with possibility. It is where you learn to trust the unseen work taking place within you, even when outward progress feels slow. Brokenness has a way of deepening your compassion, both for yourself and for others. When you have experienced vulnerability firsthand, you begin to recognize it in the people around you. You listen more carefully, respond more gently, and extend grace more freely because you understand the complexity of human struggle. The turning point within you does not only change your personal journey, it reshapes the way you move through the world. Your experiences become a source of empathy, allowing you to connect with others in ways that were not possible before your own breaking. There is also a quiet strength that emerges from seasons of fracture. It is not the loud confidence that comes from avoiding hardship, but a steady resilience rooted in experience. You learn that you can survive uncertainty, that you can adapt when plans shift, and that you can find meaning even in moments of confusion. This resilience becomes a foundation that supports you long after the initial pain has passed. It reminds you that brokenness did not destroy you, it refined you, revealing capacities within you that were waiting to be discovered. As you continue forward, you may begin to see how certain losses created space for unexpected growth. Opportunities arise that would not have been possible without the changes that once felt devastating. New perspectives replace old fears, and you find yourself stepping into roles or relationships that align more closely with who you are becoming. The turning point that once felt like rejection now appears as a necessary shift, guiding you toward experiences that resonate with your evolving sense of purpose. Even when progress feels subtle, something within you is changing, your awareness deepens, your intuition sharpens, and your ability to navigate complexity grows stronger. Brokenness teaches you to listen more closely to your inner voice, to recognize the difference between external expectations and genuine calling. It invites you to release attachments that no longer serve you, creating space for new possibilities to unfold. What once felt like an interruption becomes a catalyst, setting in motion a process of renewal that continues to shape your journey. In quiet moments of reflection, you may begin to recognize the hidden gifts within your struggles. The patience you developed, the courage you discovered, the wisdom you gained through experience, all become part of your evolving identity. These qualities do not emerge despite brokenness, but because of it. The turning point is not always dramatic or immediate. Sometimes it unfolds gradually, revealing its significance only in hindsight. Yet each step you take through uncertainty contributes to a deeper understanding of who you are and what you are capable of becoming. There are days when the memory of past pain still lingers, reminding you of how vulnerable you felt when everything seemed to fall apart. Yet even those memories carry a sense of growth. You begin to see how far you have come, how much you have learned, and how the very experiences you once feared have shaped your resilience. Brokenness no longer defines you as a victim of circumstance. It becomes part of a larger narrative of transformation, a story that continues to unfold with each new chapter. As you move forward, you may notice that your relationship with uncertainty changes. Instead of resisting every unexpected shift, you start to approach change with curiosity. You recognize that turning points rarely arrive wrapped in certainty, and you learn to trust the process even when the destination remains unclear. This trust does not erase the challenges you face, but it gives you the strength to keep moving, knowing that growth often begins where comfort ends. There is a quiet power in embracing the truth that brokenness is not rejection, but a sacred invitation to evolve. It encourages you to release the belief that your worth depends on perfection and to embrace the beauty of becoming. Each fracture becomes a reminder that transformation is not always gentle, yet it carries the potential to reveal depths within you that would otherwise remain hidden. The journey through brokenness becomes a path of discovery, leading you toward a deeper connection with yourself, with others, and with the unseen forces guiding your growth while you continue walking forward through moments that still feel unfinished and tender. A net of clear answers, and you remain present in the process of becoming. Spite continues to unfold vulnerability, while the turn point in a storm is moving without settling into a final spaces that a settled opening that is shifting and becoming shifting that has not yet settled into words or quoting even time somebody will come from the followers